Warning: this video contains disturbing images, even though they're old and not very clear, but still, viewer discretion advised. This house in Fall River, Massachusetts, is known on August 4th, 1892, as a house where a man and his wife, a father and a stepmother, were brutally murdered by a hatchet. It is now known as the Lizzie Borden house and is currently a bed and breakfast. So this is what we're going to be talking about today. Let's get started. But let's talk about why we're discussing it. So as I was trying to pick a calendar for this year that we're in, 2023, I was thinking about ones that I've gotten before. I didn't want to get another coffee calendar. I've gotten a supernatural one, which is one of my favorite shows. I wanted to get something different. So I started looking around and I found a calendar called Haunted America. That's when I decided to do a video on each month. Whatever is on the calendar per month, I was going to focus on that and create a video around it. So this month, January, happens to be the Lizzie Borden house. So lately, I've done a lot of research because I did know the general story of Lizzie Borden, like we all seem to. But what I didn't know are certain things about her that maybe was addressed in one documentary but not the other. Learning about her family, learning about her father, her stepmother, things I wasn't aware of before. So let's go over the family. So let's start with Andrew, her father, which honestly, the more I learned about him, and this is going to be really, really awful for me to say, the more I thought he kind of deserved it. Not the way he died, don't get me wrong, but he was kind of a jerk. So the house looked beautiful from the outside. From the inside, however, it was not. It was not. Not that it was falling apart and just totally, walls hanging down, holes or anything like that. It wasn't anything like that. They had no bathrooms. They had no electricity, which is something that was around back then. They had to use the old-fashioned candles with, I think it was gas or something back then. It was just, he was basically 40 years behind. They had to use a basin to get clean. They had no showers. They had some kind of toilet down in the basement that they all had to use. There was nothing in the house but rooms connected to each other. How in hotels, how you get a room and there's that door that can join to the next room? That was the house. You had to go through a room to get to another room. There was a little hallway, sure, for stairways and stuff, but that was it. And I'm not saying that made him a terrible person, but he was putting them through all this old-fashioned way of living when he didn't need to. He had the means. He had the money to pay for all these things that they were living without and everyone else at that time was living with. But he didn't want to spend the money. And the daughters resented him for it. So it wasn't just Lizzie. She had an older daughter named Emma, and they lost their mother, Sarah, at a very young age. They're about 10 years apart in age. Emma, I believe at this time, was 41. I've heard different reports on ages, honestly, but they seem to get Lizzie right, which she was 32 at the time of the murders. And so when they lost their mother, Emma, I believe, was about 11 or 12, and Lizzie was 2. And so Emma kind of became the mother figure for Lizzie, and she always kind of got that role. She was always really protective of her. Even when Abby, their stepmother, came into the scene, she was still really protective of her sister Lizzie. And Lizzie had issues with her stepmom. They were always butting heads. They were always in arguments. Lizzie was always in her room when she was downstairs. They were never really seen together. And when they were talking to each other, or so the legend says, it was always a lot of friction between the two. So it was really not a very good stepmother stepdaughter relationship. And I think it was because it may have been due to Andrew, the way he treated them. I don't know. Everyone's speculating at this point because there weren't cameras watching their every move. That's just what over time people have discovered about Lizzie and their stepmom. Just by what neighbors say, what their friends say, we're all kind of going off of that. So it seems. So the stepmom, Abby, was just kind of like at the wrong place, wrong time, possibly wrong family. It seemed more, what I've discovered, it seemed more like they got married to benefit each other. Andrew had the money that Abby wanted to feel secure, and Abby did a lot of cleaning that Andrew didn't want to do. They had the maid Bridget, but for little things, little touch-up things that maybe Bridget couldn't do because of day off, Abby was taking care of those things. So it seemed like that was kind of their marriage. I mean, who knows? There was probably some love in it too, because they were married for a long time. But that's what people seem to say about them. That's the common thing that I've learned. That was their sole basis of their marriage, using each other, or so it seemed. But Lizzie and Emma. So in today's time, unmarried at 41 and 32 isn't a big deal. Honestly, that's me. But back then, it was a big deal. They were known as spinsters. So they were living at home at that age, which you just did if you weren't married. Andrew seemed to resent them for that. And maybe they resented him a little bit because they were in the situation they were in. Again, we don't know all the specifics. But Lizzie loved going out to theaters, watching plays. So that was her way of socializing. And she, oddly enough, with all this that she's accused for, she went to church to teach children on Sunday. She was a Sunday school teacher. Yeah, Lizzie Borden. That kind of almost had me question things, but I'm going to save that for later. I have a theory about her. I'm going to go through the steps with you together. They were a kind of part of the Bordens that didn't really fit in with the rest of the Bordens. I did see in another documentary someone that went to where their graves are, the cemetery, are full of Bordens. That was a really big family at that time in that area. They were the only ones living the way they were living. Okay, so I took a couple days to kind of reflect all my thoughts on the day, what I think happened. Of course, everyone has their theories, but as far as what I've heard, what I've kind of put together through what I've heard, granted, no one really knows all the hard facts of this day, which is why it's still a mystery, which is why people are still trying to solve it hundreds of years later. Yeah, 1992 would have marked 100 years, so over 100 years later, we still don't know. But do I think she did it? Unfortunately, yeah, I think she did. Here's why. Let's go back to the day itself. So August 4th, 1892. In the morning, they did have a visitor. One of their uncles from their mom, Sarah, one of her brothers, spent the night before. He left around 8. That's known. So Abby was cleaning up the room. Andrew left to do his usual things, and there was reports of them all feeling like they had food poisoning, which still no one really knows what happened there. They think it's because they didn't really have a refrigerator either. You know, the whole no electricity thing that I mentioned. So they had kind of like basically a cooler to keep things cool, and we all know that doesn't work very well. And so they were eating the same food for like the fourth day, which is probably how they got food poisoning, because they had some of it that morning. And that is why Andrew came home early. So that's kind of the timeline, even though I didn't even mention the time. So let's talk about the time. So Abby was estimated to have been killed around 9 a.m. or 9:30 a.m. Andrew came home probably around a little bit before 11 because he was found at 11 by Lizzie. Lizzie was home and Bridget was home. Bridget was outside cleaning the windows. She was seen by neighbors who, in one of the documentaries I watched, said that she was talking to one of the neighbors at that time. So she had an alibi. So the only one home wandering around the house that they know of was Lizzie. There was no break-ins. The door was locked. Andrew couldn't even come home. He had to bang on the door to be let in. So if he couldn't even come in the door, how can an intruder come in the door to do killings an hour and a half in between each other? That is what's throwing everyone off. Who would do that? Who would hide in the house and wait for Andrew to come home and kill him too? That's what makes me kind of question things. That's what makes me want to say it's her, but still, like everyone, they don't have the hard evidence to really prove that it was her. But this is my theory. So when Lizzie called for Bridget, saying that she found her dad. Now, in the very beginning of this video, I gave that little warning. This is it. So if you don't want to see the pictures at all, turn your head. If you don't mind looking at them, I'm not going to blow them up on the screen. They're going to be kind of in the corner, kind of like what I do for like the calendar pictures. They're not going to be huge. But this is how Andrew was found, and this is how Abby was found. So these are the actual pictures that were taken at the scene once people started arriving. Okay, so now that that's done with. So now, Lizzie calls out to Bridget, saying to come quick, someone killed father. So they try to find a doctor in the area. Bridget runs around, tries to get all the neighbors. They bring people in. They alert everyone to what's happened. One of the neighbors came in, got sick because she didn't expect to see him that bad. And then things started progressing. And then people started wondering where Abby was. Lizzie said at first she wasn't home. And then she changed her story to saying that she was home. She was probably somewhere upstairs, gave very vague answers. And so Bridget and one of the neighbors went to go look for Abby. And this is what kind of makes me suspect, and I feel like what makes everyone else suspect Lizzie, is because when Andrew was trying to come in, Bridget said she remembered hearing Lizzie upstairs laughing at something. So as they were going upstairs, from before they even got all the way up, they could kind of see through a banister and they could look in one of the rooms. That room was where Abby was laying. And so why didn't Lizzie see? And one theory by someone is she wasn't laughing at Andrew being locked out. She may have been laughing at Abby. So there's kind of different scenarios there. But this is what I think. This is my theory. Yes, Abby. Yes, Lizzie probably did it. But in one of the articles I was reading, and in one of the documentaries, I think, yeah, pretty sure. So there's two separate things that I've read and watched where they mention that Lizzie had seizures. I don't know how bad they were. It's not everywhere. It's not in every documentary I've read. So I don't even know if that's really hearsay or if that's fact. I don't know. But I did read somewhere that she did have them. Now, back when I was a kid, I knew someone who he used to be a little bratty at times. And we found out later that those were actually seizures. They were changing his behavior. So if that's the case, if Lizzie really did have seizures, maybe that explains it. Maybe she doesn't remember during those seizures what she did. Maybe it changed her behavior. She obviously didn't get along with Abby. That was documented. Everyone knows it. Well, now everyone knows it got told somehow. Abby died first. So maybe she attacked her and Andrew came home. She didn't know what to do. And maybe she had a second seizure. Maybe she was still in it. Maybe that's why her story changed, because maybe she wasn't even sure what she was doing at that time. Maybe she was remembering differently. Maybe she thought she was doing this. And then when she was asked again, she thought, well, maybe I was doing this instead, and gave that answer because she didn't know. So if she did have seizures, I think that may have been it. So yeah, Lizzie most likely did it. But was she realizing what she did? That's what I'm wondering. That's my theory. So what do you guys think? Do you think she did it? Do you think it was someone else? Do you think it was Bridget and Lizzie? Do you think it was Emma, who, by the way, she wasn't even in town? She was gone for 2 weeks. She obviously came home when she found out about her father, but she was out of town, something Emma usually never did. So is there something behind that? What do you think? That's my theory. If Lizzie really had seizures, I think maybe they changed her behavior. It gave her the courage to act out her aggression, and maybe she came to when she saw Andrew lying there. Maybe that explains her panic calling for Bridget. The seizure ended, and she saw what happened. So who knows? But that's kind of what I'm thinking. That's all my thoughts on the Lizzie Borden house. Of course, I can go on endlessly, I feel like, about this, but I have to wrap this video up somehow. And if you made it this far, I can't end this video without mentioning this. I know I took a while to come back on YouTube. This video did take me a while to put together, but I did do something before this video. So I'm going to put the link down in the description if you want to see it, but I did a voice for my friend's husband's video, and he has his own YouTube channel. So I'm going to put it down there if you want to check it out. Check out his YouTube channel. It's really cool. I subscribed to it a long time ago. But I'll put his YouTube channel down on the screen below me, called Cruise Missile Films. So check it out. Check out the link. I'm thinking with this series going on, because there's a lot of research involved, I'll probably have 2 videos a month for a while until I get the hang of things. But I hope you guys really enjoyed this, because I had a lot of fun putting this together. So I'll see you guys next time. Bye.